Hello friends, welcome back to the new video. And in this video we are going to talk about very important question, that what do we learn from the identification of individual and the population. So first of all we will just quickly write about and learn about the individual identification. So individual identification, it will allow us to keep track on the life history, growth and development, lifespan, and the reproductive success, okay, of that particular individual. Okay, so here I will give you the example of bird watching. Like in the bird watching, the researcher, they are keeping an eye on a particular bird, and that will allow the researcher to find out the pattern of its migration and its breeding habits. Okay, the second is the second thing we learn from the individual identification is about the health condition. So studying an individual, it will provide insight into the individual condition, its health status, that whether it is suffering from any disease or not, and its nutritional intake also. And this will allow us to keep a monitor, okay, and to keep or deduce any kind of a relationship between the disease status and the nutritional intake. Okay, and here I will give you the example of marine and mammals also. Like suppose there is a marine species, okay, it is living in a condition where the pollutant is very high. So if we tag a particular mammal, then we can easily monitor its health status when it is exposed to various pollutants. Okay, so the third important thing we learn from the individual identification is behavior study. Okay, so identification or identifying the individual, it is crucial for studying the animal behavior, such as how it interact with the other species, that is a social interaction. Okay, and how, what are its foraging strategies. Okay, then the fifth is individual identification will all we can also okay, so the individual identification, it will facilitate the genetic analysis also, that is it allow the researchers to track the parentage, the gene flow, and the genetic diversity within a population. So for example, the DNA fingerprinting or the gene tagging, it can link individual to their offspring or identify the related individuals. Okay, so the fifth is from the individual identification, we can also learn about its movement and dispersal. Okay, so marking or tagging the individual, it will enable the researcher to track its movement and dispersal pattern, and this will reveal the important information about its habitat and the migration route. Okay, so generally the GPS tagging, it is used to monitor the animal movement. The sixth point, I will write it here. We can monitor the effect of environmental change, okay. So by following the individual animal or the species, we can see how they respond to change in their environment. Okay, so now let's talk about the population identification. So we can learn about the population size and density. Okay, through the population identification and identification population and their boundaries, it will allow for accurate estimation of the population size and density. And why it is needed? Because this information is essential for the population management and the conservation. Okay, the second thing we learn from the population identification is the population structure. So this is very important. Okay, So population identification, it will help us in determining the age and the sex structure of a particular population, and this will give a very important information about the reproductive potential and stability of that population. Okay, so we can use this information to construct the age pyramids and the sex ratio. Okay, so this will give insight into the population dynamics. The third thing which we learn from the population identification or population study is the information about the genetic diversity. Okay, so identifying the distinct population, it will allow researcher to assess the genetic diversity within and among them. Okay, and this information is very crucial because it helps us to understand the population adaptation. The next things we learn from the population identification is the population dynamics. Okay, so the population identification, it enables the study of the population dynamics. It means that it enable us to identify the birth rate, the death rate, the immigration, etc. Okay, and this information is very useful if we talk about the modeling of the population growth and predict the future trends. Okay, the population, what other thing we learn from the population identification is the geographical distribution. So the population identification, it reveals the geographical distribution of a particular species, including its range and habitat preference. Okay, and why this information is necessary? Because this information is essential for understanding the species ecology and conservation. This will have implication in its conservation. The next thing we learn from the population identification is about the evolutionary relationship. So population, actually they are the basic unit of evolution. So by identifying the separate population, we can see how they are evolving differently and how they are related to each other. Okay, and last but not the least, we also learn about the conservation management. Okay, identifying the distinct population, it is very essential for developing the effective conservation management plan, including their protection and restoration. Okay.